Good evening and welcome to the City of Sunbury Planning and Zoning Commission. It is December 27th, 6:30 p.m. We are going to have two public hearings this evening and a couple of regular agenda items. But before we get started, would you please join me for a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor St. John.
Here.
Mr. Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Riva is absent. Mr. Buchenauer is absent. Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
All right. Thank you, sir. We're on to our first public hearing. This is regarding the zoning code amendments. The Sunbury Planning and Zoning Commission has proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. We don't have any applicant presentation. We've gone through this in thorough detail over the past 3 months, but probably a book of work that went back an additional 3 months and more of the minutia. Does the commission have anything for Mr. Piles or Mr. Whitney? Okay, is there any public comment? All right, do I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Mayor, before we make your motion, I'm going to go ahead and admit into the record two exhibits. As Exhibit A would be the one-page public notice that was posted for tonight's hearing, and Exhibit B would be the copy of the City of Sunbury zoning code as amended.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitney.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Elliott. Second by Mr. Lawrence. Discussion. Roll call.
You've gone from public hearing to commission review.
Yeah, sorry about that, Steve.
Okay.
We're pushing all the way through on this
Let's
one.
push through it. Mayor St. John.
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Mr. Elliott. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Mayor St. John.
Yes. All right, good deal. Fastest public hearing ever. We're on to the second public hearing. This is Dovfield Partners LLC, 3Bs and a K Holdings LLC rezoning. The applicant has requested to rezone parcels number 417-230-01-035-00 and 417-230-01-034-001 and 417-230-01-034-000 from not zone to planned residential district. The parcels are located along 3Bs and a K south of Sherman Road. And we have a few representatives from the applicant this evening. Mr. Fisher, would you like to begin?
Mr. Piles, we'll swear him in.
Okay. Do we have anybody that would like to speak this evening?
I don't swear anybody who's going to speak in right now. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Mayor.
Chairman.
Mr. Fisher, if I may interrupt again, I apologize to hit this procedural item. I'd like to mark and admit into the record here for this hearing 3 exhibits. We have a one-page document, which is the public notice, which will be marked as Exhibit A. The 2-page document, which is the proof of service, is marked as Exhibit B. And then the binder that Eagle Creek submitted with their application which is essentially a 21 tab binder, will be marked as Exhibit C. Thank you.
Great, thanks. David Fisher, Kepler Fisher, 207 North 4th Street, Columbus, 43215, here on behalf of the applicants, Dovefield Partners and 3Bs and K. Thanks for the opportunity. I have with me Jim Hiltz from Pulte and Jim Schrim representing the developer. Happy with this group to answer any questions that might come up. I think, as you know, from working with me, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through application materials that are in that big fat binder that I'm assuming you've all reviewed ahead of time. I'm happy to dig as deep as you want to dig, but I think it's more important we talk about the important issues and the salient issues here before you tonight. Mr. Powell, could you pull up the preliminary development plan that shows the lots? I think that's the best place to start. That's great.
That one work for you?
Yeah, that's a good one. We've got a few of them in there. If that's the best, it's the colored one. This property is west of I-71, off 3Bs and K. So between 3Bs and K and I-71. To kind of orient you, it's along the area that would be the entrance ramp onto the new interchange south. As you know, that's only an entrance ramp, not an exit ramp, which is part of the reason why we're asking for the zoning right for this property. We are seeking a planned residential zoning for the property. And in your booklets at tab 2, you have the development text, which is lengthy and concise. I'm happy to go through as much of that as you would like me to go through, but I think it's most important that we understand the salient factors, which is we've got a density we're requesting a little under 3. And we'll talk about a divergence for that. And we've got open space that's a little in excess of your requirements of open space in the city, excuse me, I almost said village, in the city. So we don't need to seek any divergences or variances in that regard. We'll talk a little bit about the density in a minute. There's 2 different kinds of lots. There's 52-foot lots and 60-foot lots. There's a number of phases that are all set forth in a phasing plan that you'll have in your booklet. Happy to talk about that if you'd like us to. The developers do own and control all the property, so the people you're dealing with are the people who are going to be developing this property. We have gotten Mr. Pyle's summary and reviewed that. We don't have any issues with anything in his summary. Thought he did a great job as always. We've also looked at the material from the fire department and don't find any issues with that, but we were a little bit trying to understand. The first 2 comments were fine. The last comment dealt with roadway tees for roads in excess of 150 feet, and we were trying to understand exactly what he's looking for there. Do you know, Mr. Biles?
I don't know, but what I think they were referring to are the 2 connections that are for future
South.
Road,
North and south.
one to the north and one to the south.
Right. And of course, the problem with that always is we don't control either one of those properties. And to the extent you put a hammering head in there, it's difficult to take them out later. However, I think both those properties are probably going to be in the development cycle before long, would guess. So we'll have to see what plays out there. But needless to say, we'll comply with all the fire department rules and regulations. I do know those T turnarounds, I get the necessity for them, but we have one up here north, maybe it's gone by now, but up in the subdivision that goes north beyond Wendy's there, and it goes back in there, and there's a T turnaround in there that kind of invades lots, and people that live there don't like it. But regardless, we'll deal with the fire department and make sure they have access taken care of. We get that they have access issues with their fire trucks, and we make sure to comply with their requirements and needs. Mr. Piles, I do have one amendment to the application development text I'd like to make. I just realized there was a typo there. We were a number of months getting ready to come in to file. And if you look on the first page of our development text, in the first paragraph near the end, it says the rezoning is governed and controlled by the zoning ordinances in effect on July 30th, 2021. That date I want to amend to December 7th, 2021. It's not fair of us to ask you to comply with a zoning code that was in effect before we filed. So that July 30, 2021 date, we want to amend to December 7th, 2021. Does everybody understand the reasoning behind that? In other words, the zoning code in effect when an application is filed is the one that should apply to an applicant going forward. We just heard that you just are in the process of adopting a new zoning code tonight, which is great. Can't wait to get my hands on it, review it, and see what changes were made. But it's only fair that we comply with the zoning code that was in effect at the time of our application. But that's just a typo we want to clear up. Once again, a lot of information in here that I'm happy to go through with as much detail as possible. I think Mr. Piles gave you a great summary, and I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to go through the book. What I would like to do is spend some time on divergences. Mr. Piles mentioned divergences in his summary. I'd like to go through those in detail. Those are on page 7 of the development text. I'd like to go through those one at a time. If you want to follow along with me, the first one is the intensity of use, where your code requires a density not to exceed 2.5 dwelling units per acre. We're at 2.98 dwelling units, and our justification for that is it's access to major thoroughfares, the high quality and building design involved, and the fact that you have approved many other zonings in recent times, and Mr. Piles mentioned some of them in his write-up, that are densities at or above this density. The second is a further divergence on the intensity of use, and this really deals with kind of the geography of property. Your code says you can't have more than 3 units per acre on any one particular acre, but once you take acres and put open space on them and access points and those sorts of things, what's happened is you may have more than 3 units situated on any one particular acre, but overall we have the density we told you we will have. So it's kind of a mathematical calculation based upon the way your zoning code reads. Everybody get me on that? Yes. Understand what's going on there? The next one is front yard setbacks. Your setback is from right of way is 40 feet. If the adjoining road is less than 60 feet and no less than 75 feet from the center line. We're asking for that setback to be 25 feet on all lots, and the rationale for that, much like a lot of other zonings that you've had recently in the village and city, that Mr. Piles mentions in his write-up, people prefer to have a larger backyard for entertainment areas and that sort of thing. They do a front yard that's not that usable. Still have plenty of areas, so have plenty of room to park cars without invading sidewalks or getting into the street. Once again, this is a concept that the village has repeatedly signed off on with other applicants. The next divergence is side yards. Your code is a 7-foot minimum side yard and a total between 2 dwellings of 14 feet. We're asking for side yard reductions to 5 feet. Once again, that's standard in the Central Ohio community. I think it's a little less than a few of the recent ones, but it's generally in keeping. And the thought is with smaller lots such as this, people want the front yard space and they want the backyard space, but the side yard space is not that important to them. And with 10 feet between dwelling units, we are able to satisfy the fire department for safety issues. You note that the fire department did review our plan and had no objections to that side yard setback. They want to make sure they can get fire apparatus and personnel between dwelling units. So that's the rationale for that one. And then your next divergence, which is number 5, is a rear yard setback. Rear not less than 40 feet within the district should be maintained. We're asking that to reduce to 25 feet with decks encroaching up to 15 feet. Once again, we're finding more and more residents, and you see it in developments occurring already around the city, that people want backyard area for patios and screen porches and outdoor entertainment and fireplace areas. So we're not asking for that area to be increased to put 4-season rooms in there, but we are asking for your consideration in that regard, because that is what current marketing trends in real estate call for in terms of backyards. Next divergence is maximum lot coverage. Your code requires 25% of the lot area. We're asking that to be increased to 50% for the 52-foot lots and 51 for the 60-foot lots. Once again, these are all tied back to the same theory, that you've got a smaller lot, but people want a nice house on that lot. They'd like smaller side yards. They'd like an area in the back that they can improve with outdoor recreational and entertainment areas. And then we've got the structure separation, which is our divergence number 7. Same thing again, that we'd like to have the 5 feet from side and 10 feet between buildings on the same theory as the other divergence we talked about earlier. Once again, smaller lots, larger houses, more entertainment area in the rear. And that's the reason for that divergence. I know Mr. Piles mentioned that we were asking for a number of divergences. As you know, your code doesn't limit the number of divergences, but if you think about these for a minute, while we're asking for 7, they intertwine in a way, they're really asking for about 2 or 3. So I don't think we're being overly zealous in asking for the number of divergences we're asking for. You'll see in your packet the type of architectural standard we're leaning towards here that will be provided in this area. It's a style of architecture and quality of home building that you expect in the city and is comprehensive and in keeping with what you've seen more recently in the past. You're not going to have cheap housing being built here. You're going to have high standard housing. As Mr. Piles noted in his write-up, we have a lot of open space that's usable. We've also got trail connections that, while they're dead ends at the moment, we anticipate more development in this area, which will help to increase the use of those trails throughout this and adjoining developments. One comment Mr. Piles had was about the buffering from 71. If you look at our landscape plan, Mr. Piles, if you could pull that one up, we do have pretty healthy landscaping and mounding out near I-71, which should help answer that question for you. We think that we've done a good job there. That's in that 10 acres of common open space. While there's a bike walking path through there, there is mounding and heavy landscaping out in that area too, to segregate this development from the traffic on I-71. Anything anybody from our team wants to add to what I've shared here so far? Okay. Happy to answer questions as you deliberate on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Mr. Piles, did you want to highlight anything from your draft memo?
I'll reserve comments for the commission review.
All right, that said, do we have any public comment? All right, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
A second by Mr. Elliott. Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor St. John.
Yes. Public hearing adjourned. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, we are on to the regular meeting component. We've already knocked out the zoning code amendments. We're on to the commission review Duffield Partners LLC through E&K rezoning. I'm not going to go through all the parcels again. Mr. Fisher just presented. Is there anything else you'd like to present as part of this?
Not this time. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Mr. Piles?
Thank you, Mayor. I think from my report, what I would like to highlight would be item K that talked about the southbound turn lane, assuring that that's on the plan and that the applicant has control or the ability to gain control to be able to install that because it's certainly a design year improvement that's needed. I understand the traffic impact studies also been transmitted to the county engineer, so they may have additional comments. On item L, just a lot of the terminology used in the application was preliminary, conceptual, and just getting an understanding with the applicant on if and when the rezoning is approved, what subsequent steps do they anticipate taking to bring this to a final format? And then finally, note my comments about tree commission or in our tree ordinance. We may just want to have them do a little more work on that to quantify those trees that were eliminated from the survey based upon selected species or a dead condition, and then have them do some cal per inch calculations on what they're going to replace. I think it is between the tree lot, the lots that are on the trees that are on the lots and the landscaping portion along I-71. It is robust, but just to make sure that we've got that treated equally as we treat, other applications that might come in. And then just my final comment is the combination of these divergences, while they are similar to some other planned districts that we've approved for recent, I think this one has a little different market, which would be potentially families. And I think it's good that they have a lot of open space, but I'm also somewhat concerned about the size of house and those number of lots and what they're going to create there in terms of just the density of population. It's Common Bent was kind of designed. There's very few children there. There are a few. Miller's Cove, same way. This, I think, is more geared to and will be attractive to families. And I think the commission should take that into account as they move forward on this. And that would conclude my comments.
Thanks, Steve. Commission, have any comments or questions for Mr. Fisher or for Mr. Piles or Whitney?
Steve, I think I remember our side yard, the divergence. That sounds familiar to me. But the front and rear setback sound much different than what I remember now. Maybe my memory isn't. Do we have other developments that have that same setback, divergence that they're asking for?
On the front, it's easiest for me just to read.
Yeah, it's going like from 40 to 25 on the front and the back. And also the lot coverage for the dwelling, that seems, I'm not remembering what we've had in the past.
The front yard setback is consistent with most recently Sunbury Meadows, Section 16, Miller's Cove, and Common.
Yeah, and I can kind of get the front yard setback thing because most people want a bigger backyard, but the setback on the backyard was also a diversion as well, which kind of
It's the
doesn't
purpose.
logically
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same
cover
thing.
that.
So we're asking for smaller front yards and smaller backyards? Is that what the divergence is?
Nobody answer as we go along here, Mayor? Or you want to say, I'm happy to do it.
Let's wait. We'll ask questions first. I think I get where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Because side yards, front yards, rear yards, all diverge, right?
Right.
Larger lot coverage. That's the general gist, but they're all tied together.
Yeah, that along with density, I'd like to understand what, I think the code is 2.5. We're pushing 3. If we push 3 in other similar neighborhoods.
I would add on to, because my question is really kind of the size of the house and the lots, family versus common bent. And I actually live in the common bent area, so I'm very familiar with the backyard and everything. And about half of these houses have an open space in their backyard. So the diversion really wouldn't be a diversion, because you've got that open space that you're common. The areas that I'm concerned about where it's the backyard versus the backyard, they're a little bigger than the common bent, but the few children that do play, if they put a trampoline for the day out, they're using 2 or 3 of the backyards to do it because of the way they play and everything like that. So that's where, if this is going to be a family neighborhood, the ones that aren't up against the open space is where I have an issue.
Other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Fisher, I heard front yard, rear yard, primarily rear yard, and density of use. If you want to speak to the thought process around this. I'll give you one. I'll give you one piece of credit first, and that's that you've been able to aggregate the largest open space along 71, something that we always ask of developers. So with that said.
If I may, I'd like to address Mr. Piles first.
Sure.
His comments and his, the issue with the roadway widening along 3 Beach K, we don't own that property. And so the issue there is how to do that. And this is one of, I suspect, a number of developments that are going to occur along 3 Beach K. The question I have, and I've not even talked to my clients about this, and that is, would you take something in the way of a payment in lieu, so you kind of bank money as developments continue to occur and the need continues to rise to have the funds available to make that improvement on 3 Beach K? And Jim, is that okay with you to do it that way?
We're talking about the improvement, or are you talking the actual lane itself, or are you talking about the?
I'm talking about, we don't control the land that they're needing for that improvement, as I understand that, correct?
I think there's an issue with a certain portion of it.
Just a small portion of it, and that is correct. We would be able to bank that forward if that were possible. We're also, my understanding is that the Transportation Improvement District, this is from the Master Consultants, is now stepping in and acquiring some of that land to accelerate the process for right-of-way acquisition. But that's a lengthy process.
I'm not aware of the specifics, and I'm not sure if this is in scope or not.
Let me just say this, we're
Yes.
really not going to get done tonight.
Right.
Let us think about that issue. I just want to let you know it is on our radar screen. We acknowledge Mr. Piles and the traffic information that came along with that. Once again, what we often do if we don't control the land, we work with the municipality involved or the jurisdiction involved to provide some payments in lieu so that there's a sum of money available to make the improvement once it's available to be made. His comment about preliminary versus conceptual, I think your code calls it preliminary. And that's, so the process for us, what we're attempting to achieve is a rezoning, which is a development text and preliminary development plan. So I think what happened, Mr. Klaus, some of the team members, they're doing things that they're not really part of the preliminary development plan. They're conceptual in nature, so they're called conceptual plans. But the plan would be, assuming we're successful with the rezoning, that we would have a development text approved, a preliminary development plan approved. That would be our zoning. That would be the legislative action by the Sunbury City Council. When we are ready to proceed with a final development plan, we would come back in and under your code, which applies here, I don't know what your new code says yet, we would come back in with a final development plan, which goes through planning commission again for recommendation to city council, and then to city council for final approval as an administrative act, but nonetheless has to go through those chairs. Mr. Whitten, you disagree with that process at all?
No, I don't. I think that's accurate.
Okay, so I'll go back and look as we move with our next filing on this, Mr. Piles, to the extent we can change the conceptual to preliminary, we will, but some things are conceptual in nature. They're not meant to be part of the preliminary development plan, but they are part of the application. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then the trees, we're going to go back and take a look at that. So we'll take another look at our tree survey and see if you can modify that some and address. I do think we addressed the bad species of trees, but we'll go back and modify that some to address those comments. And then lastly, before we get to the comments from the commission, Mr. Piles is correct in that I know at least the Miller's Cove development that I worked on, that is an empty nester community. Now, what's different about that than this, though, is that community is much, shall we say, tighter than this community. And that community has private streets. It has an association that pays for all the improvements in there. So if you look at that plan, while the lot sizes are comparable, The overall development is much more compact than this, because this development has public streets, which has certain requirements that go along with them under your subdivision regulations in terms of how the streets must be constructed, how wide they must be, how wide the right of way must be, which, by the way, is part of the reason you have the issues we're requesting with the setbacks is on a private street, you don't have a setback. You just got where the curbs are on the street and you set back the houses from it. On a public street, such as we have here, you have the actual width of the pavement and you have right of way that's wider. That's just the way you and every other governmental entity does it. So there's a big distinction there, but I'd suggest to you between this meeting and next meeting, take a look at that Miller's Cove, and you're going to see it overall, while the lot sizes are comparable, the overall geometry is much, much tighter than you can see here. But Mr. Paz is correct. This is not being designed as an empty nester community. This is being designed as a market rate community. So with that, let's move to the comments you had. So Ms. Miller, and really, it's really trouble you made this comment about the backyards. Remember what we're asking for. We're not asking for houses to come way back and eat up the backyard. What we're asking for is people want outside living areas that are not conditioned. They don't put roofs and walls and HVAC on them, but they do want patios and they want outdoor fire pits and they want sunrooms, or three season sunrooms and screen porches and that sort of thing. What we're saying is to do that, to accommodate that, we need to commit to that open space zone. So we're not talking about living space that consumes the space. We're talking about, shall we say, less grass and more entertainment area in the backyard. To my way of thinking, that's a big distinction. And that addresses both what we're asking for in the rear yard and what we're asking for on the lot coverage. They're both the same thing. One equals the other when you look at the mathematics of it. But with respect to the front yard setback, once again, while there's some comparisons to developments with private streets, here we have public streets. So you do have more setback here than you would have, say, for example, in those developments, just because of the area of the right of way. I still think our divergences, while a sum total of 7, they're so intertwined, we're really talking more in the lines of about 3 of them. And we find in the marketplace that people do today want smaller lots. They don't want to, it's sort of like the old adage used to hear, people like to live on golf courses because they want to look at all that green space and want to maintain it. The same thing applies with the open space adjacent to lots that people say, I want to be able to look at all that, but I don't have to go out and mow every week. And thus the need and desire for the smaller lots in this development. And once again, this all just, unlike places like Miller's Cove, this all just in one size lot. There's several different sizes of lots here. Okay. Anything to add? Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jim Hills of Pulte Homes, 475 Metro Place South, Dublin 43017. Just to provide some clarification on this lot coverage and the backyards, to give you an idea, the houses we propose to build, we have 7 different models. They're 40 feet wide. The deepest of the single family houses, of which are 5 models that we proposed, is 46 feet. So there's a significant amount of room left in that backyard area. You take 25 feet plus 46 feet. Now that's just base square footage. But if you start to add a patio or a 3-season room, that's where this comes into play. The other 2 models that we've proposed are ranch homes. Now they're configured differently. They're 40 feet wide, but they're 65 to 70 feet deep, which encroaches farther back into that lot. The lots are 130 feet deep. So it's a significant, I mean, in terms of the depth, it's a deep lot. Where the 25 feet, why we're asking for the 25 feet is more so because of those ranch homes and how deep they are and how far back they'll go. So if that helps in terms of clarifying that.
So 2 of the 7 models would be ranch homes. That was, would the other 5, would they meet the 40 foot in the rear?
It depends on you know, how, without, I'd have to go back and look at, you know, in terms of, the problem we have is we haven't designated certain lots for the ranch homes. We're leaving that open to customers who come into the community and decide where they want to, what house they want to build and where they want to build it.
I think I might add to all this, and I think the mayor's been around a while, people hopefully attest to this. This whole issue with variances or divergences on setbacks, in part is designed to keep people from coming back in here after they buy their lot and go to the BZA and say, I want to put a deck on the back of my house and I can't do it. And why can't I put a deck on the back of my house? So part of this is just the reality that we've seen over the years of doing this, that people do come back to you. We don't anticipate what home buyers are going to want. Maybe Pulte doesn't build it for them when they build the home, but 5 years from now, somebody says, I got a raise last year and I want to put a fire pit in my backyard. And so part of this is designed to keep people out of BZA and plan ahead for how people want to develop their lifestyle in their home.
I guess, one, to your point, the size of the house will take care of that 40-foot setback, just based on the size of the house and if approved, the front yard setback.
My only other concern is just the density then. I don't know if anyone knows or what similar neighborhoods around, do we know the densities in those? You don't have to answer now if you don't know, but I'd love some comparison.
Pretty good job in this summary. I think we're
Did I miss it?
comparable to other developments of recent memory. I know we're comparable to Miller's Cove, which I did, maybe a little lower. In fact, I think Mr. Powell, we're lower than a few of the more recent ones, aren't we?
Lower than Miller's Cove, slightly less than Sunbury Meadows, section 16.
Sunbury Meadows, section 16, I think is a bad example because that was approved as part of a larger community, I'll say. I mean, it's a good reference point, but if that was a standalone neighborhood, I'm not suggesting we would have approved that, given the density and everything.
I don't disagree with you on that. I didn't recognize that other neighborhood, Mr. Powell. It wasn't when I worked on. What was it? Something Bend or something like that?
Common Jack?
What is it?
Common Bend, yeah, that's.
Where is that?
It was a
Where's that?
phase of,
It's the retreat over by Sunbury Meadows, right behind the post office.
Well, those are patio homes, right?
That's
Yeah.
what they're talking about right here.
These seem like primarily patio homes.
Are these patio homes?
Is that right? Or are we talking multiple stories?
Well, 5 of the models are single-family, 2-story homes that we're proposing. 2 of the models are a home designed for empty nesters, you know, basically a ranch.
Okay.
But they have full basements. Is that the idea?
That's, the intent is for all the homes to have basements, yes.
Okay.
What was the lot width? There were 2 different, 52 and.
Upstairs, so it's a mix.
And so it's 130 foot deep. The homes are about 50 foot deep. Is that about right? I heard you say 46 on one.
You said
Base is, and base varies from 38 to 46.
Then you can add a sunroom for another 12 foot or something.
Right. The biggest house, which is 3,100 square feet that we proposed, is 46 feet deep.
Okay.
And that's
And it could go another 12, is that right? About for like a sunroom or something? So it
12
could
to
go,
15.
what's that?
Yeah, 12 to 15. Yes.
Well, okay. So could be 60 foot deep. I mean,
Still on that card.
yeah, 25 off the front plus 60, you got 85, you got 130 foot.
Right.
What's that, 45 foot in the back, right?
And so it sounds like the
And then they sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to add one more layer on there, really what they're talking about is non-conditioned rooms or decks. For the most part, that would encroach into that setback in the back.
Yeah.
That they've limited to the 25 foot setback is really just to allow people to put decks on their houses and non-conditioned sunroofs.
It's unconditioned space.
Right.
And we really think we only have the 25 feet on the ranch homes. Is that accurate? Like even on the 40s, I'm just quick math, but you said, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. Why 15 feet, not 10 or 12? I mean, is there a standard,
For like
a deck
sunrooms.
and sunroom and stuff like that?
Oh, I was talking about, so you said the base largest house, I think, was 46 feet deep.
Yeah,
Right.
the potential home buyers will value space for a 3-season room, patios and decks, which is the 15 feet. Is that standard or is it 12, 10?
Remember, it's gonna be a function of how big the house is and how much setback you have left. That's what Jim's saying.
I know, but that's why I'm trying to get to why you chose 15 instead of 10 or 12. I don't know those
The
sizes.
15 feet is, that's as far as you could go to the back of the lot line. 15 feet from the back of the lot line, that's not correct? So you couldn't encroach in that last 15 feet if you wanted to build a sunroom or a patio or a deck.
So the deeper the house, the less room.
The less room you have.
I mean,
So you're not going all the way to the lot line.
But with these numbers, somebody who's got the smaller house could then put a huge sunroom back there if they went to the max.
They could.
so we're asking that question. Suppose they could, I suppose.
They could.
Limitations on that.
Be part of the deed restrictions.
I'm very smart to break with some of them are real low house, but I know stranger things have happened.
Just so I'm clear, when we said sunroom would be part of the house, conditioned space, right?
No, well, when we're saying 3-season room, it's not fully conditioned summer, it's not, doesn't have any HVAC in it.
And that's not something we would build.
Right.
With
Right.
what you're referring to as a very large sunroof.
Since I think we're going to ask you to come back to the next meeting, could we do a rendering or two of a typical lot, a couple different of the house plans, maybe show what the builder, Pulte, could potentially, extend to, and then what you're actually asking to encroach into the rear yard setback with potentially an unfinished space, a deck or something.
Top
Maximum
bird's eye.
maximum worst case scenario. I think that'll give us a really clear description.
Happy with that.
Thank you very much.
That'd be great.
Any other comments from the commission? And I did have a question for Mr. Whitney. This is the rezoning. I understand this is going to set the ground rules, put the parameters in place, the densities, the tree clearing, phasing, all of that. And then we're going to get into much more granular detail as we go through with the final development plan. What I don't know if it's missing at this point is a development agreement. And I know this is a little bit outside the bounds of planning and zoning, but there are some financial components like an NCA, and I think we have potential roadway improvements that we would probably want to capture in a parallel development agreement, if I'm not mistaken. I apologize if this is in flight or if the ball's in our
I
court.
think you guys have a subdivision agreement. We've signed subdivision agreement or development agreements in the past.
Okay.
And we come in, before we can commence construction, we have an agreement with you that deals with those sorts of things. The NCA thing is sort of a bigger issue, and I know I've talked with David Green about it, and we want to come up and have a discussion about that,
Right.
how that should play out both for this and other developments. Because I think there's a lot of work to be done there. We understand you expect every new residential development to come into the development cycle with an NCA in place, and we want to make sure that working with you, that the NCAs all work and are compatible. I don't think you as a village want you know, Susie lives in house A, be paying a community development charge of X, and Joe lives on the street, be paying one. It's totally apparent that doesn't help you in the end. It says, we know from these NCAs, they always end up at your doorstep after a finish.
Agree. Yeah, agree. And yeah, I think we've all been torched from, you know, going through the 150 page. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're burned. We're standing up an NCA again, outside the bounds of planning and zoning. We're standing up an NCA that's very clear right now with the Don County development.
Right.
And
I had some conversations, Dick, bring about that. I understand you've got that one. I understand you're looking at, do you expand that one? Do you resurrect the old one, or do you do a new one? I'm hoping we can be a part of those discussions in the new year with you before that's finalized. This is important to not only these clients here, but other clients along the way that I think are going to come into Sunbury. And I think, as you and I talked before, you know, policy considerations are paramount to doing the right thing for everybody. So I agree.
what I would like to capture in the development agreement, whether we know all the details of the NCA, is max mill charges and where the funds go. That's what I want to nail down. So, and I think that'll at least allow us to run parallel tracks as we figure out that piece out with zoning, development text. Everybody's moving towards the same end goal. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's right.
Sounds good.
Is this Olentangy?
It is Olentangy.
So let me ask you a question, because we're going to ask for tabling. So we've had a lot of discussion about setbacks tonight. Do we need, and we're going to get you the illustrations you asked for, Mr. Hooks and Fish here. We're going to get some further information to you on the tree survey. We're going to get some further information to you on the roadway improvements on the 3Bs and K. Are there other issues we need to be talking about, and as importantly, do we need to continue to talk about setbacks either at this meeting or the upcoming meeting, depending, of course, on what we bring back in terms of the supplemental materials?
Commission, anything else?
I think based on everything you just said, we'll probably have more conversation around setbacks. I think just from my point of view, I want to do a little bit more digging on also the density, just to understand if, you know, in comparison with similar type neighborhoods and similar size homes, how that looks. So that's something I'm going to do. If there's other things that addressing that you can bring, that would be helpful, just so we can get an understanding of how it compares to other neighborhoods, whether in the city or even in the surrounding areas.
Mr. Powell, can I ask maybe over the weeks that pass between this hearing and the next time we come in, that we work with you to, because some of those developments that you identified, I want to make sure that we have all the information on those. Some of those we did, some of those we didn't. But I think what Mr. Allen is asking for, I want to make sure we give you good information. I think it's going to be a give and take between us and the village to be able to find that.
I know you're trying to break old habits, the city.
What's that?
I said trying to break old habits, but this, you keep saying the village.
I'll get there.
I know. We all do it. It's fine.
We pay homage.
Yeah.
Anything else for tonight? When would we?
4 weeks from today, the 24th.
24. Okay, then we'll request tabling to January 24th. Same time, same place, 6:30.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's it. Any other final comments? All right,
Make a
make a
motion.
motion to table.
Nope.
Second by
Second.
Mr. Elliott.
Yep.
Discussion. Roll call.
That you got there. Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
See you in 4 weeks.
Mr. Elliott,
Thank you.
thanks for showing up.
Oh, yes. I'm apologies for being tardy again.
Thank you very
Me too.
much. Thank you. All right, we're on the visitor section. It looks like we have one visitor left in the audience. Would you like to speak? No comment? All right. All right, we're on to motion to approve the minutes, and I don't know that we're gonna have a quorum to approve the minutes at this point.
Oh, did we have an absence?
I think we had an absence in the last
I was
meeting,
absent.
Yeah. There's like three of us.
so we'll take a thorough look before our next meeting and make sure they're all accurate.
Yeah.
All right, zoning report, Mr. Piles?
Report was in your packet. I'll answer any questions and let's see if I can identify any highlights. So I don't really have any highlights that I'd like to mention. Working on the trail community thing, that's more of a planning process. Hopefully this week we'll be relocating Big Walnut wayfinding signs, and Joe Gokenauer has agreed, and I believe the council reappointed him to a 3-year term at their last meeting.
Good deal.
We ended up about where I thought in terms of new construction. I think next year with Rolling Hills coming in, probably Price Ponds, things are gonna pick back up again. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? One thing I've noticed is post-election, and I don't know if it's happen chance or if you've been in proactive communication, but signage in the right of way has definitely improved. Especially in like I'll say the Kroger outlots and in that corridor.
Yeah, I had a pretty big collection day one day, and there's a couple of them out there that it's early in the morning when I get here, I'm thinking, I'll just throw it in the park, get out of the car, I'm stopped at a light, and I'll grab the sign. Normally then a car pulls up behind me or the light changes. So there's a couple that I need to get. There are not too many out there running wild right now.
Right. All right. Discussion, new business, Mr. Lawrence?
No.
Mrs. Miller?
I actually, if the council decides to do the banking of the dollars on this turn lane, I would be interested if they would also consider putting in the writing that interest be charged to that account. Normally it's not. It's just that amount is set in the fund and it just sits there.
Okay.
Because
Placed in an interest-bearing account, the city gets,
or at least allocated interest, because I had one at Powell and it took over 20 years for it to be used, and it was still the original amount, so it
Cost of
lost
living
it.
Gone up, yeah.
yeah,
Construction costs, gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I need to talk a little bit more about that and how that would actually work. I need to understand the traffic impact study a little bit more and the level of detail of
what section can they not improve on? There's a lot of questions with that.
yeah. Okay. Mr. Elliott?
Nothing for me.
All right. I wanted to mention that we do have a Board of Zoning Appeals that was commissioned as part of our charter, and we're looking to stand that board up in the first quarter of next year. And the Board of Zoning Appeals will hear zoning appeals and divergence requests and variance requests. So we're in the process of standing that up, and this particular commission will really be focused on the planning and the zoning portion and not the zoning appeal portion. Cool. All right. Next meeting on the 24th, 22nd, or 22. Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
A motion by Mr. Elliott,
Second.
second by Mrs. Miller. Discussion. Roll call.
You're St. John?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott? Yes. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Thank you.